Hi, my name is Addie Jenkins and I'm a four-year senior at Mercersburg Academy. For my springboard project, I am in Maker's Lab and I decided to make a lacrosse stick. I've been a part of the varsity girls lacrosse team at Mercersburg for 4 years and it means the world to me. That team is like my second family and I am so heartbroken not being able to be with them this spring. But I'm glad I got to make this in order to keep me thinking about them every day and yeah, just keeping lacrosse in mind. So this actually was more complicated than I initially thought it was going to be. I started out with just a plain PVC pipe, circular pipe, and I had to take a heat gun and flatten the pipe from a circle into a flat board, which took a very long time. It took me like 6, 7, 8 classes, class periods which are hour long, and some of the 2-hour long ones to finally get the whole tube flat. So the next step, once I had my flat PVC board, was I drew an outline on the board of the shape of the head of my stick here, and I then cut that out with a jigsaw. Once I used the jigsaw to cut out the outline of the shape of the head, I used the heat gun again, and when using the heat gun, I molded the hot PVC with clamps around this shape of a head that I screwed in before we left school. And this was super easy as well. Like, I just took the board and I took this piece of paper and drew the outline of the head on this and then screwed in these screws to make the shape and just used them as a guide to make the shape of the head. The hardest part was probably the shaft, actually. I didn't anticipate this to be the hardest part at all. I thought it was going to be super easy, just kind of like use the wood that I got and cut it to the right size and be kind of done with it. But I actually had to sand it down a lot to get the correct shape that I wanted and the correct size, which I used a Sharpie. And with the Sharpie, I just outlined on the top of the wood the shape that I wanted, and I used a belt sander to sand it down to the right size, and it took forever. I didn't anticipate it taking that long to do such a, what I thought, easy step, but it actually took a really long time, but it all worked out, so that was good. And then when I was done with that, I painted the molded head and the wooden shaft blue. My next step was to drill holes in the head for the strings, and this was fairly easy. I just took a drill and, I took a Sharpie first and used my stick that I have as a kind of guide and just measured where each hole on the top was. So there was 4 up top and then 2 on these sides right here, and then just going down the sides. Something that I almost forgot about while doing this was to make the bottom part of the stick so that the ball wouldn't fall through, just straight on top of the head. I was almost done with the process when I realized that there's no bottom rounded part at the bottom where the ball can sit. So for this, I just cut out another piece of PVC and used the heat gun to mold it, and then put it inside the head here and took a rope or a belt and wrapped it around really tight so it stayed this shape. And then to finish that off, I just screwed it in so that it wouldn't leave its place. The part that was the most fun for me was stringing. It was kind of hard because I didn't have a lighter, and you're supposed to light the ends of the string to make sure that they don't fray, which is what all of my ends did here. So I would definitely go back and make sure I had a lighter next time I did this. But this was so much fun to do, and honestly also very complicated. I had never strung my own stick before, so it sent me through a bit of a loop. I had a bit of a hard time, and I had to go back a few times and redo some stuff that I had already done because I did it backwards or just not properly. But it turned out pretty good for my first time stringing. I can't complain. One thing that I wish I could go back and do better was resize the head and make the ends just a little bit longer so that they could be the proper roundish shape at the bottom. Unknowingly, I cut the bottoms a little too short, so they didn't make the exact shape that I wanted on the bottom of the head. So the lacrosse ball doesn't quite fit all the way down. It kind of sits on top of what was supposed to keep it in. But, you know, it was my first time doing anything like this, so I don't think it's too bad of a mistake. My last part of the creation was testing it. So as soon as I thought I was done, I ran upstairs and I got my little brother to go outside and throw and catch with me a little bit. And it is a little bit off. The pocket is very shallow, not very deep, so it doesn't have a great hold on the ball. But that is because of the shape of the head, really, and it's also strung really tight, so if it were to be used every day, the pocket would loosen a bit and create a good place to hold the ball. When throwing and catching with the stick, it is definitely harder to catch with because of the fact that this doesn't go all the way down to the bottom, so it kind of, and that it's such a flat pocket, it can just, it just kind of is like a pancake and it bounces off a little bit. And throwing wise, as you can see, the head is a tad crooked, which is unfortunate, but so the throw is a little bit sideways, but it works just fine, and not usable for regular play for sure, but something that I think is a few things cool that I learned to do while making this stick was how to use the jigsaw. That was a fun part of the process, and because I didn't have one at my fingertips at home, I went to my friend Lily and I borrowed one from her, which was super nice. And yeah, that was cool to use and something that I had never done before. And I also learned how to string a stick. That was something I hadn't learned how to do before either. And I also learned a lot about flattening PVC Project management was definitely harder when I was home and not at school. At school, we had a planned schedule, and I had class every day or 4 days a week, and I was meeting every day with the stick and being able to create and make it. And at home, I was actually busier than I thought I'd be in quarantine, and I have actually been working, so it was tough to set out huge amounts of time to work on it, but I would just set out certain days and say, like, okay, this day I'm going to get this done, and 2 days later I'm going to get this done, and just kind of making sure that I got it all done in a reasonable amount of time, and I definitely did. And then I just kept everything on Hackster, which is a website that we use to track the progress of our projects with photos and text. And yeah, I was keeping that updated for the days when I was working on my project. If I were to go back and do this again, I would probably plan a better way to mold the stick, the wooden shaft, and also the head. I'd make it so that it wasn't crooked when it sits on top of the stick, and that it could be the proper width at the bottom so that the ball could go all the way to the bottom. I'd also find a lighter that I could use for my strings so that they don't come undone. If I had more time to build on this, I would probably just try to fix the head so that it wasn't crooked. I really think that with the amount of time I had, that I did a decent job, so there isn't much that I would redo or build upon if I had more time. Shout out to the girls lacrosse team. You all are my family. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this presentation on my lacrosse stick.